Welcome back to the Bluechip Breakdown, Vols fans. I'm your host, Bull. In today's video, we're going to be talking about some big position battles to keep a close eye out on as we are heading into spring practice. It starts March the 18th, which is literally 2 weeks from today's date. And we already know that, winter workouts have started, okay? The competition has already started. Some of y'all might be looking at spring practice and you're saying, well, you know what? This is really just more about teaching these players, some of the playbook, plays, things like that, teaching them some of the fundamentals, seeing where some other players might fit at some different positions, things like that. And all of that's true, but everything is a competition. I can tell you that as a former collegiate athlete, and also I know some college coaches. This is what they're looking at, okay? They are evaluating all the time, whether it is, how you're doing inside of that classroom, which may not matter as much, all the way down to what you're doing in these winter workouts. We've been looking at the NFL Combine pretty heavily here lately, and, they've got those next-gen stats. The college coaches have the exact same thing, and they can compare every single player on the entire roster. And this is, again, this is just part of the evaluation process. We're getting closer and closer to fall camp, which is really summer camp. Okay, it's 2 days, 3 days, whatever you want to call it. But this is just a big piece to that puzzle. So we're going to go ahead and dive into a couple of position battles that I think are going to be the most important, for us to keep a close eye out on as we are breaking down some practice clips from spring practice. And, I want for y'all to be very well informed on who we should be watching very, very closely heading into all of this stuff. But before we get into it, please do us a huge favor, like and subscribe to the channel. All right, so today we're going to be starting off on defense, and we'll probably have offense out tomorrow. But we're going to start with what I think is the deepest position on this entire roster, and that is defensive tackles. I'm just going to name off the, key players that I feel like will be thrown into the mix, thrown into that rotation in the 2024 season. Starting off with Big O, Omar Norman-Lott, Elijah Simmons, Bryson Easton, David Hobbs, Jackson Moy, and also Nathan Robinson, who is a guy that I think is probably more of a tackle body. We'll see how he, kind of progresses throughout the offseason, but we've heard from some insiders that he has pretty much recreated his body. I don't know exactly what that means, if it means that maybe he's going to be more of an end now, or, if he's just gotten a lot bigger, and he's definitely a solid tackle for us. We could also throw a guy like Trevor Duncan into that mix as well. But the biggest thing for this group is that we're really deep, and we know that Coach G likes to rotate guys. We're going to be just fine here, okay? We've got players that can get after the passer. We've got players that can, stop the run and kind of plug up gaps. And then we've got guys who can do both. But I think that most of these players can do both. We're going to be just fine here, but it's going to be very interesting to see, probably later on, very close to the season, what the starting rotation is, okay? What's the first two and maybe even three groups that come in for our defensive tackles. And the next group is going to be strong side defensive end. This is where Tyler Barron played for us this past season. I think he had 6.5 sacks, but he did a really, really good job for us. And a lot of people have been wondering, who can we bring in to replace Tyler Barron's production? Well, I think that we can actually upgrade at strong side defensive end, starting off with Tyree Weathersby. He's a guy that we absolutely loved his high school film. He came in this past season over the summer, and the insiders say, hey, he was pushing Tyler Barron for that strong side D in starting spot, or, at least to be able to rotate in and get some solid reps. So we think that he's probably going to be the guy to start right here, but it's not all said and done, because we've got other guys like Tyree West, who looks really good towards the end of the season, especially in that Citrus Bowl. And there are several other players like Dominique Bailey, Jason Jenkins, who James Pierce raved about a lot, Kellen Lindstrom, who is going to be a true freshman. He's actually coming in the spring, and Trevor Duncan and Nathan Robinson. I think that either one of those two players could potentially end up playing, again, either strong side D in or defensive tackle. Biggest thing for me, though, is, we've got good depth, right? So you look at D tackle, you look at strong side D in, there's some really good depth, but I do think that Tyree Weathersby is going to end up being the starter at strong side defensive end this upcoming season. All right, now for the Leo position, which is where James Pierce plays. This is primarily our pass rusher, but they also kind of drop back into cover sometimes. James Pierce obviously is going to be the starter, but I think he's probably going to end up being the best pass rusher in the entire country this season. He plays a big role in what this team can do moving forward. Behind him, we've got Joshua Josephs, who looked really good last year as well. We're hoping he could take that next leap forward. I think that he may end up being number 2, coming off of the bench behind James Pierce at the Leo position. But I would also throw Jordan Ross into that mix because Jordan Ross is different. To me, he's probably the closest thing to a James Pierce that we have on this roster coming in as a true freshman. What's he going to do in the summer workouts? I don't think he's going to be coming in spring, but he's definitely a guy for us to keep a close eye out on moving forward. And then we've also got Shandavian Bradley, who we're hoping that he gained the weight that he needed to in the offseason. We've also got Caleb Herring, who looked good whenever he got to play this past season. But, that's 4, 5 guys who I trust a lot. The biggest question in this group is who's going to be the next guy coming off the bench behind James Pierce. And that's going to be a very tight battle because we've got, 4 other guys outside of James Pierce that I feel like could definitely play at a very high level for our volunteers. Now for the linebackers, and things are about to get real interesting. Number 1, Keenan Pili should be a starter. We know that we play in a nickel base, which means that we're only going to have 2 linebackers playing for most of the time. Keenan Pili can do it all. 6'3", 240 pounds. He's great in run support. He's great in pass coverage. He can also come after the quarterback. So he's going to be a starter for sure for us. We're hoping that he can stay healthy. Fingers crossed on that. But who's going to be starting next to him? Elijah Herring was a starter this past season, but he didn't play that well in my opinion. I don't even think that Aaron Beasley played that great. I feel like we're going to upgrade over our entire linebacking core this past season, for most of the season. And I'm going to be very interested to see if a guy like Jeremiah Thielander or Arion Carter will step into the role right next to Keenan Pili. If you look at the entire season, just between Jeremiah Thielander and Arion Carter, I would say that Jeremiah Thielander played better than Arion did. Arion looked a little bit slow sometimes. I think that he gained a little bit too much weight this past season, and obviously he did have an injury, so he missed a good portion of the season as well. But I think his ceiling may be a little bit higher than Jeremiah Thielander's is. I would like to see Arion Carter next to Keenan Pili as the starter, but it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Whoever ends up performing the best, I feel like is going to win that starting spot. That's going to be a very close battle between those 2 players. Now, outside of that, just talking about spring ball, we've also got Jalen Smith, who played very sparingly in 2023, but he's another one. He's a phenomenal athlete, okay, about 6'1", 225-ish pounds. But, he's going to be very good in pass coverage. He's going to be great at sniffing out the run, sideline to sideline. All the guys that we've talked about so far are. And I know, just him coming from Grayson High School here in Georgia, that he's going to be very football savvy. He's going to be a football player. He's going to understand what to do. So I would throw him into that mix as well. And then we've also got Caleb Perry and Elijah Herring. To me, they're kind of on the outside looking in, okay? Caleb Perry, who also has good size. I think he's about 6'4", 235, 240 pounds. I've heard some rumors that he's, one of the better athletes on the team, at least this past season he was. I didn't really like what I saw from him on film, just in all honesty, but we'll see. Can he take that next step forward? And then again, we've got Elijah Herring, who started all of last season, but he had a whole lot of, mishaps, okay? He misstepped a lot, and it just looked like he was confused on what to do. And he also, I would say, probably is the slowest out of all of the linebackers that we're talking about currently. So I don't know if he is going to see the field that much this year. I just honestly don't. But we will see if maybe he picked it up. Okay, was he moving slow just because he's a slower player, or is it really just because he didn't know what to do? Can he come in with a guy like Coach Inge? Can Coach Inge kind of explain things to him in a way that he can receive a little bit better than he did this past season? All of those things, that's what I'm looking at, right? Like, those are my question marks. But then also, okay, we're just talking about spring, but heading into the summer, we've got Edwin Spillman, and then we've got Jordan Burns also coming in, who I feel like can get thrown into the mix. Will Coach Inge rotate his linebackers as much as Coach BJ did? I really hope that he does. And hopefully, right, with all of the talent that we have, whenever we're talking about Elijah Herring, going from a starter to potentially a guy that may not see the field that much this season, we know that we're upgrading tremendously at this position group, and that's going to make your entire defense so much better. So I'm very excited about this one. And I would say maybe out of the position battles that we're going to talk about today and even tomorrow, this one right here intrigues me the most. I really want to know who's going to end up winning out here and what the rotation is going to look like at the end of the day. The next position group is the star position. I've got Jordan Thomas as probably the starter for this. He did a good job at the end of last season coming in. He's got great size. He looks pretty good in coverage, and he does a great job in run support. Outside of him, we've got Jalen McMurray, who's the transfer from Temple. He's a little bit smaller, but I think that, we brought him in to be more of a star player. He does play really hard, even though he's small. He's very physical, and I think that he could be a great star for us. He's phenomenal as far as his technique goes. Okay, like whenever we're talking about man-to-man coverage, I love what he could bring there. I think that he would be an upgrade in man-to-man coverage over Jordan Thomas, but at the same time, he's going to be a little bit smaller. So is he going to do well being matched up against like a flexed tight end versus Jordan Thomas? I don't know, but I do feel like he would be probably better at guarding like a little scat slot type of a player, coming out of that position. So we've also got Boo Carter, who we recruited to be pretty much a do-it-all guy. Okay, he could play star, he could play safety, he could even play corner. So I've kind of got an asterisk next to his name, but I've heard some really good things about him in the offseason workouts. It sounds like he's already being very impressive. Listed at about 5'11". If he's there, then I can trust him to play star. My biggest thing was I thought he was about 5'9", 5'10". And, that kind of scares me playing at the star because, again, you could be guarding so many different body types. If you get a tall guy out there, it's going to be very, very difficult to cover that player in one-on-one coverage for Boo Carter. But I think that he's going to do well, and obviously we're very excited to see what the freshmen do coming up here in spring. Next guy's going to be Christian Charles. I really like his size, and I like his physicality. I think he's prototype for the star position, in our system. And, we'll see what he does in the offseason. Hopefully he can get himself, worked up into the depth chart. He had an injury this past season. I think that he would have been a guy who actually played it if it wasn't for that injury. But we're hoping that we can hold on to him. He's one for us to keep a close eye out on as far as, will he hit that transfer portal if it's not looking good for him on the depth chart? I think that he probably would. But Christian Charles for sure is a guy that, I would trust to play man-to-man coverage, zone coverage, know what to do, come up and run support, get off blocks well. So I really like what he can bring to the table. And then I'm going to throw two other guys in there that are kind of like tweeners, and that's going to be Jordan Matthews, who does play corner for us. He's a longer guy, okay? I don't know how much he's going to be weighing at this point, but he's probably somewhere around 195-ish pounds, which means that he could potentially play star. I like what he brings, especially in man-to-man coverage with his length, with his speed, everything else. But he gets off blocks well, and he will also tackle. The other one is going to be Dramod McCoy, who I feel like we kind of brought in from Oregon State to be more of a true cornerback, kind of like an outside guy. But he can do it all. He could play anywhere in the secondary. I would say probably outside of safety. But if we had to have him play there, like in a dime package where he's doing more man-to-man coverage, he can do that too. He showed that in his Oregon State film. So I'm excited about him. I'm excited about all of these players, but those are just two guys that I'll be interested to see if they do get some burn at star coming up here in spring. So let's go ahead and talk about cornerbacks. Dramod McCoy is going to be number one for me. I definitely see him being a plug-and-play starter. He's a guy that we've heard a lot of the insiders talking about this over the winter workout session, and man, he's been very impressive. And it sounds like even they're starting to get more excited about seeing what he does in spring practice and in fall camp compared to where they were just in getting him out of that transfer portal. But we've said it for a long time. This is a guy that can do it all, literally man-to-man coverage. He did a great job versus Washington, shutting down all of their players and seeing them in the combine, especially that tight end that I think ran like a 4.4 or like a 4.5. I mean, dude, he covered him well. He covered everybody well. So he's going to be a for sure shutdown guy for us. And he's really good coming up in run support plays with tremendous leverage, gets off blocks well, and he has really good fundamentals in tackling. So outside of him, we've also got Ricky Gibson, who I think looked good whenever he got the opportunity. He came on strong towards the end of the season. He's another shutdown guy. Loved his high school film, and he is very similar to Dramod McCoy whenever you're talking about coverage, getting off blocks, just the whole deal, being a pure do-it-all cornerback. I love both of these guys, and I have them pegged as my starters. But we've also got Jordan Matthews, who didn't play that much this past season, but he does have that length. Okay, he can play man-to-man well, and we'll see. Does he end up getting thrown into the mix as a starter? I think really the biggest battle is going to be between Ricky Gibson and Jordan Matthews for that number 2 corner spot. Again, I've got Dramod McCoy as plug and play. We've also got Christian Conyer, who's another one with great length, about 6'2". He might be a little bit heavier than Jordan Matthews is, but same deal here, right? Going to be great in man-to-man coverage. He really impressed me with that this past season. Just watching him, in some of the practice clips, it looked like his man coverage just improved dramatically from what we thought with him coming out of high school. I thought he was more of a zone cornerback, which I still kind of feel like he's more of that, but he can also play man-to-man coverage too. Physical enough to come up, make the tackles, get off blocks, the whole deal. Really, really like Christian Conyer as a prospect for us. I think it's probably going to end up being him and Jordan Matthews as the two cornerbacks coming off of the bench, but we'll see how all of that plays out. And I'm also going to throw in Christian Harrison, Marcus Gorey Jr., and Boo Carter into this mix. Now, I didn't talk about Christian Harrison and Marcus Gorey Jr. at the star position, but I could also see them playing there. Okay, their body types and all of that, it really makes a lot of sense for them to also be able to play star. But I definitely think that they're going to kind of get cross-trained in some different spots. Really for, Christian Harrison and Marcus Gorey Jr., we could see them getting a little bit of burn at star, corner, and safety coming up here in the spring. And wherever they fit in the best at is where we'll see them get some more reps at coming up in fall camp, at least as far as I'm concerned. But there's a whole lot of depth, okay, in this secondary so far leading up to the last position group, which is safety. And number one for the safeties, I've got Kobe Thomas. I think that, him coming from Middle Tennessee State, watching his film versus Alabama, we love what we saw. He's very physical, and he does great in coverage. He's passionate about Tennessee. Sounds like he grew up as a Tennessee fan, so you know that you're going to see a lot of fireworks from him. And he's another one, just like Jermod McCoy, that the insiders have been raving about in winter workouts, and they're very excited to see what he does out on the field. Is he going to be like an Eric Berry type? I don't think he's going to be quite that caliber of player. But as far as the way that he plays, okay, as far as just being around the football and playing with that passion, making those big hits, probably forcing fumbles, just kind of like making those critical plays. I'm looking at Kobe Thomas to be that guy for our secondary and maybe even for our entire defense this season. Keep a very close eye out on him. I have him as a surefire starter at one of the safety positions. Then behind him, okay, or actually next to him, I guess, we've got Andre Turrentine, and then we've also got John Slaughter. That's going to be the biggest battle for the safeties. Who's going to win out right there? Who's going to be the starter? I would say probably John Slaughter, because I think that he's going to be better in man-to-man coverage, but also he's going to be better in run support. Now, we did see Andre Turrentine come on in that Citrus Bowl. I had kind of talked about him leading up to that game about a guy that, hey, he's going to be starting. So do we really want him starting in this game where we know Iowa's going to be running the ball so much? Will he come up and will he be physical? Well, he showed and proved that he can be and that he will be. So I feel a lot better about that now, okay, as opposed to how I felt going into that game. So we'll see what happens with this position battle. I would say that if Turrentine isn't starting, then he's probably going to be transferring out. And I would also say the same thing for John Slaughter. So it's going to be difficult, right? Like, these are the decisions that, I hate for the coaches to have to make, because it's, kind of a, lose-lose almost situation. But we'll see. Maybe they will decide to stay, or maybe the coaches can kind of split the time enough heading into fall camp where the guys won't transfer after spring. That's what I'm hoping. But behind those two, we've got Christian Charles, Christian Harrison, both of which we've seen, again, play star and play safety. It'll be very interesting to see if, both of those guys end up being more of a safety or more of a star. And then, for Christian Harrison, will he kind of be playing at corner? Christian Charles actually played a little bit of corner for us too. So those are two very versatile guys. We've also got Idris Farouk, who is a true freshman coming in. I'm not sure how far he's going to push on the depth chart to be a starter or really even a rotational piece this season, but we'll see, right? I mean, you just never really know until these guys get on campus. I think that he still has some things that he needs to work on, but, that's going to be one that I will definitely be watching closely just because he is a true freshman. But as far as really being able to get some true playing time, I don't see that happening for him, at least not at safety, special teams. He could be one of those guys. But again, we will see as time goes on. And those are the position battles that I am most interested in, that I think that we all need to be watching very closely heading into spring practice. Tell me what y'all think, though, down in the comment section. Did I leave anybody off of this list? Please let me know. And as always, thank y'all for sticking all the way to the end. Make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other volunteer fans. And we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.